Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Rob Dowley. I'm privileged to serve as mayor of Holiday. So I'm joined today by District 4 Representative Council Member Drew Quinn and District 5 Representative Dan Gibbons.
You have myself, City Council Member Sabrina Peterson, along with City Council members Paul Fotheringham and Matt Durham. So the purpose of the town hall meeting is for us to be able to connect with the public, connect with our residents, and answer any questions that we can, and just kind of share back and forth, kind of explain to you the thinking of the council, why we're discussing this, and where we are at. Know that there will be lots of more opportunities for us to engage with you, the public.
That's the most important thing in this process at this point, is to start to gather input from our residents regarding any questions, concerns, or other input they may have as we work our way through the public process as it relates to this tax increase that we're considering as a council during the budgeting process.
So in 2019, Holiday celebrated its 20th anniversary. To prepare for the next 2 decades, the council kicked off a 3-year process to determine a financial sustainability plan that will maintain current levels of service while addressing millions of dollars of unmet needs. Since incorporation in 1999, the city of Holiday has not increased its property tax. Since 1999, our footprint has grown due to annexations, which has brought more revenue, but at the same time, it has also brought more financial responsibility. Council and staff have taken this issue very serious, with a strong desire to be transparent and inclusive of the public.
The challenge we face as a council is that one of the probably the most telling statistics is that the Holiday portion of our property taxes are only about 10% of what we collect now. When we incorporated in 1999, that number was about 18%. So other entities have continued to raise their property taxes all along, while we have stayed, fairly stagnant, stagnant in terms of what we've collected. And at the same time, we've built a lot of infrastructure into the city that's been great for us as residents, but we now have to maintain that, as well as the aging infrastructure that we inherited in 1999. So that's the challenge we face long term, is how we address those issues as a current council and future councils down the road.
Implementing a long-term revenue strategy based on community priorities and preferences is a council priority. From surveys and small group connections to open houses and town hall meetings, public engagement will remain a central focus of the Holiday at 20 process from beginning to the end. Holiday residents provide valuable and essential insight. Residents collectively will determine the preferred way and ultimately the support needed to take action. The Citizen Advisory Group was created by the Holiday City Council to assist and advise the council on the identification of a long-term financial sustainability plan.
We knew that this challenge would affect every citizen in Holiday, and so what we did is we went to the citizens, and 8 Holiday residents were chosen to form a Citizens Advisory Group. They were charged with making a recommendation for a long-term sustainable revenue plan.
Just a word about this Citizen Advisory Group. I served on that committee, but as one of the council representatives, but this was really a group of very smart residents of Holiday. They're professional problem solvers, including professional engineers, chemists, business strategists, even an actual rocket scientist was on the committee. And they gathered data and compiled 3 different options or decision levels that we should consider. And they looked at also the effects of those options, both on the citizens in terms of a revenue gathering impact, but also on the impact that each of those decision levels would have on actually solving the problem at hand. And that report that they compiled is a 29-page report. It's published on the holiday20.com website under the property tax tab. Our revenue has been relatively flat in the 20 years that we've been in existence. Property taxes haven't gone up, at least not the part that the city of Holiday has assessed. And also we've had a our sales tax kind of go in the tank when the Cottonwood Mall went away. We've made up for it. It's some other revenue sources, but overall, in the last 20 years, revenue has been what I would say is flat as a pancake. Costs, however, have not been flat as a pancake. And this slide we're looking at here looks at the allocation of the revenues we've received when we first incorporated back in 2000 timeframe versus more currently. Public works projects tend to be, well, frankly, deferrable. It's discretionary. They get the last available dollars in the budget. Whereas if you look at police and fire and justice court, those are not discretionary costs. We have to cover those first. And but kind of the way this whole works is whatever's left over goes into public works. But as a result, those costs don't go away. They're just deferred, unfortunately, because we have not raised revenue in the meantime to stay more current with those costs. And so as a result, we've built up a big pile of $75 million worth of deferred maintenance. Now, to give you some context, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gina, our annual budget, our total budget for a year is in the neighborhood of $15 million. And so our capital needs budget deficit or deferred maintenance has accumulated over the last 20 years to be up in the $75 million range. Now, don't worry, we're not trying to tackle this whole $75 million in 1 year, but what we have to do is put together a plan that's more sustainable in terms of being able to deal with these costs now and going forward into the future and not continue to defer them. And so you can also see from that slide that the majority of that $75 million is up in those top three. And I hate to tell you that those top three are those non-sexy sorts of costs that you can't get grants from outside entities. Parks and trails, art and culture, sometimes we can get grants from outside entities so that we can cover those outside of the Holiday City budget. Lots of our parks, for instance, were provided to us by grants written by our intrepid assistant city manager, Holly Smith, that we didn't have to pay for ourselves. We do have to pay for their maintenance going forward. We just have to pay for the parks themselves, their initial development. But our neighborhood roads, bridges, city-owned sidewalks, storm drains and canals, no one's coming to our rescue there. These are on us and we got to take care of them. This next slide kind of really tells the story in a nutshell and also helps us come to the conclusion that the Citizen Advisory Group brought to us and among their three decision-making levels. It's this slide that kind of tells the tale of why they recommended what they did. And this same principle we're going to go over here regarding roads also applies very much to the other infrastructure such as the storm drains and sidewalks and other public works projects.
Every street in the city is ranked and monitored on this pavement condition index. You can see that the streets that are in fair to good condition can be repaired or maintained for a fairly reasonable amount. Chip seal, a way to repair a road that is in fair condition, costs $2.19 per square foot. However, when a road deteriorates into the serious or failed range, the expense skyrockets. A thick overlay or reconstruction costs over $70 per square foot. So the longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes.
Now, fortunately, we haven't let any so far go into the serious or failed condition, which costs a whole ton more, you can see, per square foot, the thick overlay or reconstruction. And we cannot allow any of our roads to go into that level of disrepair because then it just eats up our entire public works budget, even as it is now. And so that's kind of the tale of the story. The recommendation that the the Citizens Advisory Group came to was what was called the biggest impact option, primarily to deal not only with those poor and very poor condition roads, but also to eat up into those satisfactory and fair levels to prevent more of those roads falling down into the much more expensive categories. And that's the option that even though it requires the largest upfront influx of revenue, over the course of 10 years, our overall costs will be much lower if we bite the bullet earlier on in order to keep more roads from falling into those much more expensive treatment levels.
this slide here shows a timeline of the process that we'll go through to consider the potential property tax increase and the opportunities. It's designed sort of for maximum transparency, maximum opportunity for feedback and input from taxpayers. And I'll just sort of walk us through it really quickly so that you get a sense for how it will all evolve. You can see we're at number 2 right now. The project was kicked off last month, and this is our first big share and listen public event where we're giving the taxpayers in Holiday an opportunity to come in and hear a little bit about the proposal and share their ideas and thoughts about it. After these events are over, the city council and the staff will work on a preliminary proposal, and then there will be more share and listen events to give more opportunity for input and just to make sure people understand what we're doing. There will also be, I think, a survey that'll be circulated at that time to try and get some input from a different avenue. In May, city staff will refine a budget proposal for the city, and that will include discussion and consideration of the property tax increase. And then in June, there will be more opportunity to have people come in, hear the proposal, comment on the proposal, share their thoughts.
We'd really hoped to kind of go through this process last year. But, obviously with issues related to COVID, the timing wouldn't have been right. We wouldn't have been able to really give it a thorough vetting with our citizens, which is the most important thing for us.
In July, hopefully more or less, we'll be reviewing the information from all of these share and listen events, and we'll start promoting information related to our truth in taxation process and hearing. The truth in taxation process is a product of state law. Any taxing entity like a school board or a city that wants to increase their property tax levy has to go through this truth in taxation process. And it's designed to present a hearing where the property tax increase can be presented to the public, and the public gets a chance to hear about it and comment on it. In advance of that hearing, to make sure that everybody has an opportunity, there are specific noticing requirements. So you'll see notices on your property tax bill, and in other places, the city will be sending out information to try and make sure everybody's aware of the hearing. For Salt Lake County, all of these hearings are scheduled by the Salt Lake County government. That's to make sure that it's all kind of coordinated and we aren't scheduling hearings on the same day for different taxing entities. That usually happens in August. And so you can see we're sort of trying to steer this whole process starting from last month to August, when we can have a truth in taxation public hearing. That'll be the opportunity for the public to give final input on the truth on the proposed property tax increase before the city council votes on it. So that's kind of the process and the timeline for this proposal.
For the next 7 months, we're going to listen. So we have 7 ears. We're going to listen for the next 7 months to the citizens. And then after a truth in taxation public hearing in August, we will then speak as a city council after receiving all the input. And so this is the first of many, many opportunities that the citizens will have to voice their either support or opposition to this proposal. And I just want to assure you that all members of the council are going to be listening with both ears as we listen and you share your concerns.
Actually, my question relates to sales tax. Was wondering, are we seeing any revenue increase from the online sales tax? And would it be possible to meet our needs with a sales tax increase? And if so, what percentage would be required?
We had projected a 10% reduction in our sales tax for this fiscal year, not knowing exactly what the effects of COVID were going to be on businesses in our community. The trending that we received initially from April, May, June, which were the first 3 months that we really were having impact, were actually showing that we weren't receiving any negative impacts at all. And I think a lot of that, I don't know if we can put an exact number on it, but a lot of that is, as you had said, from federal legislation that allowed us to collect sales tax at the point of sale for internet orders. So I think our trending in sales tax will be up. I think our sales taxes run about $4 to $5 million a year. So say if we had a really, really great sales tax year and had a 10% increase, that would be an increase of $400,000. And to answer your question, that though that would help, it really wouldn't, in my view at least, based on the data we got from the Citizen Advisory Group and Jared, who is helped with the pavement condition index projections, and our consultants, wouldn't really touch what would be required in terms of addressing the long-term infrastructure shortfalls in the city.
We had the same question, Mr. Hilton, that you did, and spoke with our financial advisor earlier this week to update our model. The model that was used as the basis for the Citizen Advisory Group's recommendation. But we believe, as the mayor said, that will be a small portion of an eventual solution and just isn't enough to fund all of our needs. One clarification, the city council doesn't have much flexibility in setting that sales tax rate. The parameters for sales tax are really set at the state level and not at the local level, other than the local option, which we've already exercised.
Yeah, if I could chime in, Ron, that's a great question, and there are two factors that I see in play here. One is Holiday Hills, which is the former mall property, is going to, over the years, is going to give us some increase. And the other is exactly what Gina says, is that we don't have the same sort of flexibility to raise sales tax as we do property taxes.
Thank you. That helps a lot. So it sounds like most of the city's revenues come from the property tax. And I'm not opposed to an increase, but I would like to see the percentage capped at a low level. And then just, as properties values go up, the revenues will go up, but keep the percentage low.
I understand the need for a property sales tax. I'm a little disappointed that there hasn't been better monitoring of that. We haven't had a tax increase in 20 years. And, we should have been building up a reserve, in my view.
One of the criticisms we've received, and the one I'm hearing probably most often at this early stage in the process, is why haven't you guys been raising your taxes all along to address these issues? It seems a little bit irresponsible, and it's really hard for me to argue against that. I kind of agree with it. I do get now, after doing this for 7 years, the political pressures of sitting on these councils and having to go through this process, because it's really not very fun. And I personally don't want my property taxes raised, but in order to do it, I mean, gosh, we spent 2 years now on this, and it'll be 3 years by the time we get done. And we'll take a lot of criticism for our residents. So I really understand why councils get to the point where they go, oh yeah, we should really do it, but gosh, we can make it one more year. Well, that eventually turns into 20 years, and then we end up in the seat we're in right now. And it's the reason I said in my newsletter, I'm proud to sit on a council that finally has the courage to say, we're going to put this out in front of our residents, and we're going to tell them what our Citizen Advisory Group told us. And after they receive all that information, and we vote it down because there's so much clamor from residents, at least we can say, well, we tried to educate you on the stuff we were educated on it, and we can say we've gone through the process, I guess.
We have not kept pace with our sister cities. We are practically the only municipality on the Wasatch Front that has not raised property taxes consistently. In fact, many municipalities raise them every year. And so we have not kept pace. I don't think I don't think the idea is that we want today's 2021 citizens to pay for everything for the past 20 years, but we just want to start the idea of, or we want to consider the idea of having an ongoing revenue stream that is going to adequately meet our needs without overly burdening the citizens.
Is it a finite term for the tax, or will it have a cap over a certain amount of time? What are you considering around bonding? How are you projecting the expenses over time? Those are some of my questions. Thank you.
You know, how we initially kind of project out the projects is on the Holiday 20 website, and it would be kind of a hybrid model where there's a certain portion that will go to ongoing maintenance and a certain portion that will be committed to bonding, because we feel like we need to go out and get a chunk of money to address some of the roads that are in a position where they might fail. And when roads reach a certain level, if you don't take care of them and they fail, the cost to repair them is astronomical. So in terms of tying the property tax to, you know, a timeline, oh, we're going to take care of these problems and then we're going to reduce the property taxes, I think it would be really disingenuous on the part of our council to say that. I mean, the reality is, if the property taxes go up, they're really to address the inflationary forces of maintaining our infrastructure, and that's going to continue. So the best we could hope for is that the property taxes, if we do go out with a property tax increase, that it would take care of some of our issues for at least a certain amount of time before we have to go out for another property tax increase.
I also want to thank the City Council for having this City Hall meeting over Zoom, so that those who were interested or were able could follow what you're saying, see what you have. I think the videos that you have online are pretty interesting. I see that there have been more put on there since I looked the last time, so I'll take a look at those. So I really do commend you. I think Holiday City I love Holiday City. I've lived here now for 12 years. I've lived in Utah all of my life, and I've lived in Holiday City for 12 years now. I've come to love it. I cherish it. It's grown, it's developed, it's improved over the 12 years that I've been here. I do support a property tax, and as I said, I hope it's. Well, I guess I didn't say it yet. I hope it's within a range that those of us on a fixed income, because I am retired, we're able to meet it in a reasonable manner. My property value has really increased since I came here. And so I know that my property taxes will be generating more and more money. So those are my comments. And thank you for giving us a chance to talk with you and listen to your meeting.
Do you have any idea, order of magnitude, what you're seeing as a potential impact on the average residential homeowner in Holiday?
That's a specific question I asked as a member of the Citizen Advisory Council. It's what would be the impact generally to homeowners of different price levels of homes in Holiday. And in that 29-page report, you can find it in holiday20.com. It's actually on page 28 of that report. So almost near the very end, it has the 3 decision level options of the treading water level, the slightly better option, and the biggest impact option. And you can see on that chart, the left side of those charts for each of those decision options has the different kind of sample home value levels and what the net property tax impact would be on your property tax bill. And so those are given the 3 different options. You can see what those different decision levels would be and what the impact would be to you as a citizen.
When I look at the graphs that you presented, a couple things come to mind, and I'm just wondering if you could comment on them. One is, you know, I was on the Planning Commission many years ago, and one of the things that we always talked about was developers incurring the costs of expansion into Holiday, and we see a ton of new homes going up. You know, we see property values increasing. You know, in my mind, I was thinking, you know, there's got to be increased revenues with these increased property values, and, you know, with all the development that's gone on with respect to the city itself. I mean, there's condos everywhere. You know, my question becomes, you know, why aren't the developers, shouldering some of the burden here? I understand that we haven't raised taxes for some time, and I understand the whole issues behind the mall, but it makes me kind of scratch my head to say, did that initial objective of having the developers incur some of the costs fall to the wayside?
I was just saying, I don't think it's necessarily fallen to the wayside. I can tell you, I've been on the council for 11 years. And when I first joined, we had an operating budget we dealt with of, I don't know, maybe 9 million. So it has increased quite a bit over the past 11 years. So, that's a lot of that is due to annexations. A lot of that has been due to development that we've had in the city. We are a built out community, so we don't have a lot of development going on. But I will say that having said that, we also incurred with all these, as we brought in these new areas and these new, annexations, and whether it's been developments or what, it has also increased the level of debt that we have because we're taking on aged areas. So I don't think it's gone to the wayside, but I think that, over 20 years, it's going to take a little bit more than that to kind of fill that gap. Paul, you had something you wanted to say, I know.
Yeah, just to clarify the nature of home values and property tax. As home values go up, property taxes don't go up with that, but rather as home values go up, the mill rate goes down so that your property taxes remain the same regardless of the fluctuations in your home value. The only thing that's going to increase your property tax itself from year to year is a truth in taxation process, which is this is what we're starting in order to change the relative tax value, taxable assessment relative to your home, regardless of its annual fluctuations in value. And so since we are, again, a built out city, I mean, if we were adding parcels or if we had a bunch of open fields, which were agricultural in nature, and then we rezoned them and annexed those pieces, then that would be adding additional assessable value to our city. So, I mean, there are some, if your home goes up in value relative to all the other properties in Holiday, your property tax might go up a sliver. And so what I said might not be true in terms of not going up at all. But the receipts that Holiday gets as a result of the property tax has not gone up, except for in the cases where Sabrina was talking about where we annexed a chunk of ground. But all the costs come with that. And so, relatively speaking, revenue has remained flat per household, as it were.
Not more than a couple years ago, we had an increase in taxes that was earmarked for roads. Those amounts went on to our power bills, I believe. No, power bills, water thing. Anyway, so we're paying tax that was designated for roads and supposed to fix everything. Now I see we've got a big hole in the budget for roads, and where's that money going that was brought in for the additional taxes, or what's going on here?
So my understanding is that we imposed the MET and then bonded for about $9 million in road project. Did all of that work in 2009 and then paid that back over a 10-year period. And Stephanie, you'll have to correct me whether it was 16 or 17, we extended the MET tax and absorbed those funds from the paid off bond into our budget to fund the increases that we've seen in public safety costs, and also our contract for public works with Salt Lake County, our snow removal services, essentially.
Well, and I think back in 2008, and again, this was a year before I took office, but we bonded for that $9 million. We were told when we did a road evaluation that we really needed about $25 million for our roads, which obviously we didn't have. So we bonded for that $9 million, assessed the roads, and did as much as we could with that $9 million. So that was kind of the work you saw going on, whether it was slurry seals or what before. And then it was 2017 when we did that again.
What is the stormwater fee that, as I read the report, is going to be included no matter what?
So that's a new enterprise fund that we were one of the few cities in Salt Lake County or even in the Wasatch Front metro area that doesn't have a stormwater fee that's associated with it. That's an enterprise fund where that money is assessed through utility bills, and then that money is reserved specifically to only be used for stormwater maintenance.
That one will be on the utility bills, but a property tax increase would only come once a year when we see it.
Correct.
Okay.
So I was just going to add that the stormwater fee is to some extent the result of requirements that have been placed on the city by state and federal government, that to meet those requirements, it's a fee that we need to impose to make those improvements.
I'm looking at the report and I see that our law enforcement gets a lot more money. Justice Court gets a lot more money than it used to. And I say this with lots of respect for law enforcement and justice and things like that, but are we getting our money's worth out of these increased costs? Because if we're putting more money in, but we're not getting more out, I would wonder about that. But I'm simply curious as to why those costs have gone up so much and roads haven't been paid for.
The nature of those costs are just subject to inflation. And it hasn't been huge jumps in any given year, but year over year, you've got some salary increases, you've got increases for the cost of vehicles, you've just got normal, regular increases in costs. And in an environment where your revenues aren't going up at the same rate, there's also another thing at play that has to do with the number of cities that are participating in UPD. We believe very much in the UPD model because it gives us some economies of scale, but sometimes if we have a neighboring city that jumps out of UPD, that economy of scale isn't quite as advantageous. And so we've had to bear a little bit more cost of some of those regional police services because there are fewer cities participating. UPD, of course, has had to scale back those regional services as a result of serving fewer communities. But overall, we lose a little bit of that economy of scale when a neighboring city bails out. But still, we view the UPD model to really be the way to go. And Mill Creek agrees with us and several of the other communities that are in the UPD model.
So I saw something, and I don't remember where it was that I was looking at it, that talked about an increase, a 2% increase for inflation that would be included, something about cost of business or something. So would this include any of these three options that are recommended in the report? Would it include a inflation increase that would be annual that we do not have currently?
Anytime we increase taxes, even if it's just a 2% going forward, we would have to go through the truth in taxation process. And that's what's suggested so that we don't just find ourselves in the same hole, 15 years from now. But so whatever we would vote on this round could not tie the hands of future councils. But the plans that are suggested in the report suggest a course of action going forward year by year by year.
I think the point is to look at this. We don't want to make a decision now that is just going to limit us to what it is now. We want to be able to look 10, 20, 30 years down the road, create a plan that does that.
I'm wondering what the proposed storm drainage improvements are and how might they relate to the Upper Canal?
We have a long list of projects for stormwater. It probably wouldn't surprise you. And included on that long list are potential improvements to the Upper Canal as well. There are areas where the canal is over 100 years old and requires some maintenance. I think that list will be prioritized over time, but includes, and I'm just going back to our sheet, I think it is about $18 million in projects. There are areas of our city where stormwater infrastructure just doesn't exist at all. And so this council and future councils would prioritize that list.
I was just curious because I got an email this morning from one of my constituents. He was trying to say that we really that saying we haven't raised property taxes in the last 20 years is not correct, because as his property value has increased, he's been paying more each year on his taxes.
We are only one of, I think, 8 taxing entities.
Right.
And if you go, and I would tell him or her, if you go to the Holiday 20 website, there's a tab there on property taxes that goes through that whole process. But the bottom line is that many of those, in fact, all of those other entities over that 21-year period have all gone through a truth in taxation process numerous times to raise their taxes on his property tax notice. We have never done that. That's what we're saying. And that really is, so that's part of it, is his property taxes have grown because the other taxing entities have raised their taxes all along. The other issue is a fluctuating issue that we are in taxing districts, and Gina could probably explain it better. But basically what that says is the property taxes in those areas cannot go up unless there's a truth in taxation hearing. So just based on value. So if the value goes up in that area, the mill rate has to drop to keep that revenue line stable, but it varies within the taxing area based on how those taxes are assessed. So it gets really complicated, but his may have gone up more than his neighbors. So his would have gone up, but his neighbors would have dropped, if that makes any sense. So there's 2 ways it can really go up. One is truth in taxation. The other is just adjustments of his property in relation to other properties in his taxing area.
So like I said earlier, there is more opportunities for you to share comments and questions. You can go to that www.holiday20.com.
Please know that this is not set in concrete, this decision. We truly do want to listen, and we appreciate your input.
And I'll echo what Dan said. We really would like to hear from as many of you as possible. Please know that we have studied this out. Our Citizen Advisory Committee was very, very helpful. They worked very hard and dug into all aspects of this problem. And I think that in putting everything together and listening to our citizens, we really can make a good decision.
So thanks everybody for logging on. Thanks for your time, and we'll do it again.